guys, Eric and Roth here for Channel Surfing. The Eric has been sick for 2 weeks edition.
Plague.
The plague. I mostly say that because I have water here, but I might be coughing once in a while, and I apologize.
Yes. We kicked him out. He came to work last week one day, and we made him go home.
It was very sad.
Get out.
It reminded me when I was a kid. Here's a dark childhood memory. A few of us got lice at school,
as happens,
and so it was a total ostracization, thing. They put us all on the blacktop outside to wait for our parents and to quarantine us away from the kids inside.
Oh, I could just picture little Eric.
But then we played superheroes, and I was the Hulk, and it was okay.
Oh,
I was always the Hulk. He's my favorite.
So I didn't know that. I just learned that right now. That the Hulk is your
because
favorite.
of the Bill Bixby TV show.
So who is your favorite actor who has played the Hulk?
Well, Ruffalo.
Okay.
But again, I got a lot of Bixby love. Of Bixby love. And I really liked in the Ed Norton movie that there were a lot of nods to the TV show. And it was actually sad that they only played the score. The fact they played the score at all was amazing. But they played it that briefest moment where he's walking on the road. It's like, no, play it for a minute and have him freaking try to hitchhike. You know, it's like, come on, guys, go all in.
Just do it.
Just do it.
So Ruffalo, because he's the best Bruce Banner, you think?
Yeah, I do. I think that was a really.
I think he is too.
Great interpretation. Yeah. So let's get TV news, but let's start out first, kind of talking about something that was an interesting. It's not TV news per se, but an interesting thing that happened TV related this week, which is the Power Rangers fan film. I say the, even though there have of course been many.
Yes.
With anything popular.
I think this is the one.
This is the definitive.
This is the definitive one. It's the one that certainly the most time and energy and money went into.
Yeah.
There were some effects going on in that thing.
It was very well made. Yeah. Certainly. I mean, that's one reason it was going to get people's attention. The fact that Katie Sackhoff and James Vanderbeek were in it.
Yes.
Was kind of amazing.
Very amazing. Pink Ranger
and Vanderbeek playing Rocky, the second Red Ranger.
Yeah.
That was incredible. He was good, you know.
Who, Vanderbeek?
Yeah, I like Vanderbeek. Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, no. Did you watched him on Don't Trust the Bee?
Yeah.
He was great.
He was great on that. He retweeted me the other day, by the way.
He did?
He retweeted me because during the Oscars, I tweeted, you know that CBS's PR department is high-fiving and saying, you start running those Academy Award winner Patricia Arquette's CSI Cyber ads ready now. And so I guess he thought that was...
And it is, you are accurate.
Because, they really, I mean, I was joking, but not that they had those ready.
Oh, of course they did.
Yeah,
well, she was a lock to win.
She was a lock I mean, nothing's a lock, but she was a 99% gonna win. Yeah. So it's like, they had those ready.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we do like the Vanderbeek. So what did you think of the trailer in total?
I thought that...
Not the trailer, the fan film.
Yeah, I mean, I dug it. For what it was, that's what I wanted to talk about, which is it was meant as a satire,
right?
And and the director Joseph Kahn was the director who directed the movie Torque and a couple other little things, but he's done a ton of music videos. If you look at the guy's music video resume, it's everyone you can think of he's done. Which is why he, obviously good visually. And he and the producer Adi Shankar, who is, a big producer, did Dread.
And he also, he does a lot of these fan films.
He calls them bootlegs, yeah.
The bootlegs, pardon me, Adi, I'm sorry. But he did one that I really loved a lot for Venom. Yeah. With Ryan Quantin.
And they did the Punisher one that was with Thomas Jane.
Yeah.
That was kind of funny since Thomas Jane had officially played the Punisher.
Yes.
And he came back. But yeah, so the director did an interview right when it went up that was I think he wanted to get ahead of it and be like, this is a satire.
Right, because he didn't want people thinking. And it's interesting because before I watched it, I had heard rumblings of it. And some people were displeased. Yeah. They felt like it was sort of pissing on a franchise that they loved, and they loved it for its lightheartedness and its silliness and everything that the Power Rangers are and are beloved to be. So I was like, oh wow, that's too bad. And then I watched it and I'm like, this is hilarious. It's like, and he said that it was a satire, and it's not poking fun, I don't think, at the Power Rangers.
No, it's Hollywood.
It's poking fun at Hollywood, and it's poking fun at the Hollywood idea of the dark and gritty reboot to the nth degree.
Right, and let's be fair here, it's kind of poking fun in a way at the fans who ask for the dark and gritty reboot, you know, and don't think that they're, who always want it to be darker, darker, darker. And that's what's been funny about when this thing went up, because a lot of people loved it and were like, oh my God, I do want a 2-hour movie of this version of the Power Rangers. Yeah. And like, again, if you haven't seen this thing, it's like R-rated. It's like the Power Rangers themselves are like running around with freaking machine guns.
And they have hit rough times.
They've hit rough times. There are multiple headshots, blood splatter. Yeah. There is the Black Ranger basically in a threesome.
There's nefarious murder everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and by the way, we should say that the girls in that threesome are played by porn stars who, if you look in the closing credits, are supposed to be villains from the Power Rangers. Yeah. There is profanity galore,
Yeah, I mean, it's really a hard R thing. And it's funny because I think if it wasn't, there are elements to it, there are moments in it that I'm like, this would be a really cool movie if it wasn't a dark and gritty Power Rangers movie. Right. Only because, that isn't what the Power Rangers is. And if they did it, fine, Yeah. But there's this moment when Katie Sackhoff, before the big reveal, she's cut to sort of whispering nefarious, and she's messing with people's minds and getting them to do things that they should not do, like shoot themselves in the head. And I'm like, that's
spoilers, I guess. Continue.
We'll have to put a spoiler alert on that. Anyway, yes. So she. God. Anyway, I was like, if this was a different film, this would be a really cool moment in it.
Yeah, no, there is a lot of good moments in it. But here's the thing. So I'm someone who, I have a lot of love for Power Rangers. It's pretty ironic because it's like I saw Power Rangers as an adult and I was like, this is ridiculous, but there is something very lovable in its inherent goofiness about it to me. But no, it's like my question for you is like, would you think they ever should do this? No. Really do this?
No, I really don't. I mean, I just think no. I think that it's actually really a brilliantly made satire, and I was laughing the whole time and I was enjoying it. And like I said, if he wanted to do a dark and gritty movie, I bet he could make a good one. As a director. But that wasn't what he was trying to do here, and he wasn't advocating that this is how the Power Rangers should be redone. I think he was just making a comment about sort of Hollywood. Yeah. So me personally, no, not really. I don't think that the Power Rangers needs that. Yeah. And not every movie needs to be dark and gritty.
No. Yeah, and that's the thing is like, and not every, not every, version of a story. I mean, I think Batman's a big example in that. I do agree that if you had to choose, like, dark Batman is probably the best way to go. Sure. But there's also been great lighthearted Batman too, Yeah. And then there's something like Power Rangers. It's like, no, come on, guys. Like this, you can get a little more serious with it probably. Yeah. And I am curious the tone of the actual feature film that Lionsgate is making. Yeah. But to play it the way that fan film did, really play it, if they were to do that, it would just be ridiculous at a certain point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But Batman makes sense as a dark character, and then he's a dark character.
He is a dark
Darkness, no parents.
Darkness, no parents. All right, let's talk about some other news stuff this week. We learned the first bit of news about American Horror Story Season 5. Mm-hmm. And it was a bit of casting that when I heard it, I was like, of course. Honestly, which is Lady Gaga will be one of the stars. Sounds like one of the leads.
Well, she's definitely been pursuing her acting career more. Yeah. It's of course I agree with you. Like, of course Lady Gaga's in it. Though I will say this, and I don't. This is going to inherently sound like an insult, and I truly don't mean it this way. Right. But I am surprised that she wasn't utilized in Freak Show. Yeah. Like to me, I'm like, that was a perfect fit. Where were you asleep? Like, right. So it has me going like, well, what is this one about then? Because you've already done the Freak Show, you've already done Witches, you've done the Haunted House, you've done the Asylum.
Mm-hmm. I could see though the appeal in also kind of casting her against type. Yeah. And not putting her in Freak Show for that reason, and just be like, who knows, she could play some prim and proper girl who does messed up things, or messed up things happen to, either or both.
That's true. I mean, when she came out and she did The Sound of Music, that was
messed up. No,
that was
great.
So messed up. She was great, but she also was very un-Gaga-like.
Very un-Gaga-like, yeah.
So maybe she's stretching herself.
Maybe we don't like you were kind of referencing. We don't know any details about this season yet. Mm-hmm. We don't know the title, the theme.
Do you know what I would like them to try and do? And I don't really know how you do this in a 10-episode arc. But it'd be cool if they could.
13, I think they do.
Is it? Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we'll even harder. is to do a real stalker story, like a Halloween or a Friday the 13th, you know, like a real just classic
sort of
slasher high school kids stalker tale in 13 episodes. Now, I don't know that you can make it last that long. I really don't.
I bet you could, you know?
But if you can, I will be impressed.
Ryan Murphy, here's the thing about Ryan Murphy. Love him or hate him, I think he'll try anything. So, you know, who's to say? I can see them.
But they get so convoluted. I mean, those stories get so convoluted. They don't just focus in one place. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It would be like Stalker plus Demons plus Aliens plus
Hellbeast.
Plus Hellbeast.
I'm in. I'll check that out.
And then the Kraken.
Yes. On a completely different note about announcements this past week was that DuckTales is returning with a brand new series on Disney XD in 2017.
Also starring Gaga.
Also starring Gaga, she'll perform the DuckTales theme song this time. To me, this was another one, though, that hearing the DuckTales will come back sort of made sense to me because we're in an interesting age where, and you know, I'm very much an example of it. I'm not casting any stones or anything, but we're in an age of people who don't let go of their childhoods and love that stuff and like really relish it. And I think look at Disney Channel, which Disney XD and Disney Channel are obviously siblings, and them doing Girl Meets World, which for them was a very cleverly calculated move because it's like this is a show that on its surface is here's a new show for tween girls, but guess what? We're gonna get a bunch of older people who would never watch our channel to watch it because it's a sequel to Boy Meets World.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And a bunch of people who, everyone asking, why are you reviewing the show on IGN? You should just see the numbers, guys. Especially, though, and it spikes anytime that it's like, Sean's back. Like any of the episodes that are like, and season 2 is going to have more of that.
And that's the thing. The fact that it's spiking when Sean's back tells you how many people that are going to IGN are watching that show. You know, because they had to know Sean was back in order to click that episode.
Or like if they didn't know, they're like, oh my God,
Sean's back.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So yeah, those things are reviewed for a reason.
Yeah. So DuckTales to me makes a lot of sense because it's a win-win because it's like, hey, here's a new cartoon with the DuckTales characters that we want kids to watch and certainly hope that there'll be a bunch of new merchandise that'll sell and it'll be a great sensation again. But unlike other animated series we launched that are just brand new, this one might get a lot of older viewers who are going to check it out because they grew up with DuckTales.
Well, sure, and I think the other big hope, the most obvious thing, is that it's not just kids, but kids and their parents. That they're trying to create a series where they can enjoy it together. Yeah, you know, which is pretty rare because I don't have kids, but I've taken care of a lot of them. I've been a nanny.
But you've heard of them.
I've kidnapped many. Right. And it is painful. Sometimes children's television can be really painful to watch. And so anything that I think that can hook in the parents and make it a little more bearable, even if it's just that nostalgia element, is probably a win. I
mean, you hope that it's actually, you know, because again, talking to my friends who have kids, Matt Fowler, are so thankful when there's an actual clever kids show that they can watch on a different level. And there are your Adventure Times and your Gravity Falls that do that. So yeah, you know, DuckTales, if we're lucky, what happens is the new DuckTales is written by people who grew up with the original DuckTales who might be sardonic and clever and can have some jokes that are aimed at the older audience that will also work for the kids.
Yeah, and those parents or any people that are nannies out there like I've been will be only too happy to embrace that new, like try and convince the kids that they like it. You like this, Jedi mind trick them.
Yeah, you better like it. We'll find out more in 2017. So let's talk about the 2.5 Men finale.
Oh, yes.
We had to delay doing this podcast for a couple reasons, including me being sick. So sorry that this is, you know, we're talking about this like a week after the fact.
And my perpetual laziness.
And your perpetual laziness, as Dino has established. He had an email I didn't include this time, but he had a follow-up about that.
Dino did?
A friendly follow-up about that, yeah.
Oh, hi, Dino.
Yeah. But it's been an interesting week because we're not going to mention on this podcast in depth the Agent Carter season finale, but more importantly, Parks and Rec series finale, because we've done separate videos, which you can find on IGN, where we discuss those in full. But you've got Parks and Rec ending, you know, a 7-year run, this acclaimed show, which was low-rated, but very acclaimed, beloved show. And then you had 2.5 Men ending, which at its height, was a juggernaut.
Oh,
I mean, there was a time when it was one of the highest rated shows on TV. I mean, it still ended doing better than most other network TV comedies, even though it was obviously not what it once was. But this was a juggernaut of a show. 12 years?
I had to confess that a decent amount of the time that I spent watching the finale was trying to calculate how much money the stars made on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what did Cryer walk away with? I mean, whatever he walked away with, bully for Ducky.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'm so happy for him.
I always remember, here's a tangent, but John Cryer before 2.5 Men had the show killer label because he'd had several sitcoms that only lasted a few episodes. And I remember when 2.5 Men went on, he was on Kevin and Bean, which is a local LA radio show, promoting it. And he was like friends with the show. And that was the joke, was he'd been on to promote all of his failed shows.
Yeah.
And they made a bet. They're like, because they were like giving him a hard time, like, oh, we're glad to see you, great guy. This show's gonna fail.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, this one's not. He's like, I have a feeling. Like, no. And they made a bet that I believe was if it was still on the air by Christmas, he got to come out at the K-Rock Acoustic Christmas, which is a huge concert, and like intro a band, and he won the bet because 2.5 Men was still on.
What band?
I mean, again, 12 years ago. The fact that I remember this at all.
Fail, Eric.
Yeah. But yeah, 12 years. So good for John Cryer. What a bizarre finale. Now, and again, we should say this, neither of us were fans of 2.5 Men.
Nope.
Not at all. But, watch the finale. It was a TV event. I had curiosity, even if I wasn't kind of doing it for my job. I was like, I want to kind of see this. It was so weird that it basically turned into an hour of let's crap on Charlie Sheen.
It was so weird.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, full disclosure, I really didn't watch much of the show.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I would occasionally catch snippets of it, like in the background.
Yeah, it was. We were saying before, it's inescapable in a way.
Yeah,
syndication. It was on,
because of syndication, or like other people are sort of watching or whatever. So there was a part of me that was really confused. I was like, is this how it is? Like, this is such an odd show to have been such a huge sitcom because it was so meta, but really awkwardly meta. It wasn't like 30 Rock meta, It was like, they'd be like, oh, we've made so much money off of terrible jokes.
Right. It's funny because it's true.
It's funny because it's true. And like they sort of poked fun at the shenanigans that had happened behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Very publicly, though.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was about torturing Charlie Sheen, metaphorically.
Yeah.
But even more odd than that is that he dropped a piano not just on Sheen's head, but on his own. Why would he drop it on his own head?
So I think that was him, and this, like, really, this is a week later, and so you shouldn't care about spoilers to that finale. But so yeah, the finale ends with, and he did say that he wanted to have Sheen actually show up, but that didn't work out. But Charlie, the character, shows up, and a piano falls and kills him. We just see him from behind because it wasn't actually Sheen. And then Chuck Lorre, the creator of the show, pans over to him. Was just sitting there in a chair?
He was sitting there in a director's chair.
And he turns to the camera and says, winning, and then a piano falls on him. Yeah. I think that was only Lorre putting that in to be like, oh, because I'm taking so many shots at Sheen, if I kill myself too,
then it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but... Sure. I mean, but like in his imagined world, he'd been in a Buffalo Bill pit for years, suffering and being, I assume, kind of raped
there
by
was a
his
little
wife.
Bit of implication, Melanie Linsky doing the best with bad material.
Yes.
I mean, she had a recurring role for years on that show.
And she's great.
I love her.
I love her. But I found it so bizarre. I just found it to be one of the most bizarre finales I had ever seen.
It was really weird because, like, look, I am not in defense of Charlie Sheen here.
No.
I think he acted like an absolute lunatic and like insufferable and someone no one would want to work with and deserved everything to losing that job. But that was 4 years ago. Yeah. And the last time I watched a full episode of 2.5 Men was when Ashton Kutcher joined, because I was curious how they'd handle it. And at the time, they did, and it was almost understandable because of how bitter it was, how public it was, that when Ashton Kutcher joined, there would be some pretty meta jokes. That even though the character of Charlie was always a bit Sheen, that they'd get a little more pointed. The fact they killed him, all the thing. I'm like, okay, all right.
They killed him and nobody cared that he was dead.
Yeah, let's deal. I understand we're dealing with this, but that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So for the final episode of the show to be this like pile-on, it couldn't help but feel petty. You know, it was just like, okay, now guys, you really, to acknowledge the character in the finale made sense.
Yeah.
But then it just be like, let's make joke after joke about Charlie Sheen. It's like, really?
Yeah, I agree. I thought it not only felt petty, but it was like, don't you have bigger things to worry about, Chuck Lorre? Like, you're really successful. I mean, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, the winning, you won.
You did win. You continue to win.
You continue to win. Your series are juggernauts.
Yes.
Charlie's fails. He's not doing well in life, it seems. I mean, like, the guy looks like he's not doing well.
Right.
So it's just like, why do you care
Yeah.
that he was an ass? You got rid of him.
It was just weird.
You know?
Like, again, it's 2.5 Men, and no one should be precious about it. Even the fans of the show, I don't think would be precious about it. But for any show to be 12 years, that's a great success, and kudos to them for making it 12 years. So it just felt weird that their finale would be, because I will give them this because it's 2.5 Men, and I have low expectations. I'll let them have those, like, you know, looking at the camera, bad jokes. Like, for them, that was okay, I thought, you know. But yeah, just the joke after joke about Sheen, and to end the show like that, it was so strange.
And then it was like the other big recurring sort of joke was how badly Ashton Kutcher didn't want to be on this show anymore.
Right.
Which I was like, since everything else is so meta, is this also true?
Yeah.
You know, which is like, you are making so much money.
Yeah.
Like, why do you care?
Look, guys, everyone got rich on the deal.
Everybody got
Charlie
rich
Sheen
on
might
the
have blown the
deal.
money, but he got rich too.
You know what I mean? You got to show up to work for maybe 6 hours out of the day and go home to Mila Kunis. You're winning, Ashton.
Yes.
You're winning.
That was strange. All right, let's move on. One more news thing I just had to mention because it's an odd thing, and we're a couple weeks out from this, but still I wanted to mention it, which is CW renewing Beauty and the Beast for season 4.
Yeah.
Well, season 3 has not premiered.
Yeah.
It's coming back this summer, and so they sent out the press release with, here's the premiere date for season 3. And guess what? We ordered another season. This show is in no way, on the surface, there's nothing successful about this show.
Right.
Even by CW's lower standards, it is extremely low rated.
So do you think it's just that they have such an affection for the cast?
No.
Like,
even though I think, you know, Kristen Kirk is a CW star, she was and is, and she's perfect for the network. There are a lot of people, you know, like no one's going to, I mean, I guess, look, maybe at the next TCA, we'll ask them, we'll see what their answer is, but there are a lot of behind the scenes. CW always has had their like different reasons than the other networks for their renewals, and I think we've talked about before, like especially when they did all those renewals in January, it's like they were always looking at online before the other networks as a bigger factor and whatnot.
Yeah.
But Beauty and the Beast, first of all, is produced by CBS. And again, CW, co-owned by CBS and Warner Brothers, but most of their shows come from Warner Brothers. So there's a speculation that CBS is just like, hey, we have to have a couple shows on this network that we co-own.
Yeah.
Because in the long run, we're not making the money off Arrow and The Flash that Warner Brothers is, you know?
But why not produce a different show that
right.
might be a little more successful?
Right. But then there, again, and this is all like a little bit of speculation mixed with things that people are saying, but it's like Beauty and the Beast apparently might have a bigger following overseas.
Okay.
I believe a lot of their funding comes from Canada. A lot of CW shows are produced in Canada, but this one I think is actually co-financed in a different way. And it was already being turned into a summer show, so it's a strange move. Like when CW renewed all those other shows, you're like, oh, that's kind of the nail in the coffin for Beauty and the Beast. It'll air its 3rd season this summer, and then that'll be it.
Yeah.
And yet, no.
And yet, no, Pierre comes back. I don't watch it.
Yeah.
I watched, I think, the pilot of it, and that is it.
It's not a good show. And
it is. I did not enjoy my experience, and I haven't heard that it's gotten any better.
Yeah.
So I have no answers for us.
Yeah.
Like it does strike you as one of those things that you're like, I guess you have your reasons, and they're probably really complicated financial matrices that make sense to bean counters, you know.
I guess at the end of the day, the only takeaway I want to say from this is kind of a follow-up to the one we had a few weeks ago when all this renewals happened, which is CW, don't try to, and in TV in general, of course, the old rules don't apply for renewals, but CW especially, and I guess that's the comforting thing, because if you looked at a lot of the sites, especially like TV by the numbers and whatnot, everyone's so nervous, especially because CW does less shows a week, that if this show is okay, that only means my show, the one I love the most, is in danger more. And I had this with The 100 because I love it so much. So I did wonder, like, oh, they're not going to decide The 100 till May probably. But if iZombie is a big hit, doesn't that hurt and I want iZombie to be a hit, but doesn't that hurt the 100? But then they renewed the 100 before iZombie even debuted.
Yeah.
And so Beauty and the Beast is the same thing. A lot of there are fans, even though it's a small fan base, but those fans thought every time another CW show was renewed, they're like, that's just another reason our show will not be back. It's back.
The rules are there are no rules.
The rules are there are no freaking rules. So that's our takeaway from Beauty and the Beast surviving.
Like Grease.
Yes. Sunday night, this Sunday night is a few premieres of brand new shows.
Yes.
There's Secret and Lies on ABC, and there's Battle Creek on CBS. But let's talk a bit about Last Man on Earth.
Okay.
Which, is kind of very, there's some reasons for it to be in a wheelhouse of our audience, but also I just think it's a fascinating show that it exists at all. So this is Will Forte starring, the title says it all.
He is as the last man on Earth?
Yeah, and the executive producers are Lord and Miller, who are the directors of the Lego Movie and the Jump Street films.
They have no talent.
They have no talent, and they're known for failing
Just big failures. Yes. Taking unworkable concepts and making them fail.
As an aside, how awesome was the Everything is Awesome performance?
So awesome. Yeah, no, and I want to say just before I get any tweets that I was being entirely sarcastic.
Yes.
I adore them. I'm like obsessed with them. I worship everything they do, and I think they entirely do take unworkable concepts like a 21 Jump Street reboot and a movie based on Legos and make them brilliant.
Make them absolutely something that are not only funny but are actually got interesting things to say sometimes. And,
these are really these are two of my favorite directors working in Hollywood, period. And I love Will Forte.
Yeah.
So there was no way I was not going to watch this
right.
and give it a whirl. I do think it's a really tough thing though, because a half hour of television is based on relationships and banter.
Yeah.
That's what it's based on.
When they released the trailer, which wasn't really a trailer, it was kind of a concept trailer because they hadn't really started shooting the show. Even watching that, I'm like, this is a really interesting short film in a way, but is this sustainable as a series? And we should say, we've seen the first. It premieres an hour, and we won't delve into any spoilers about it. There are some other actors that were announced for the show, but how they play into it is like even if we knew, we wouldn't tell you. But yeah, you've got a show that really is about a guy wandering around and there's no one there. And can that last for multiple seasons? I don't know.
And I think that's a question that will get answered very quickly.
Yeah.
In the series, and I think they've even said that, which is a thing that they will address relatively quickly in the series, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. I will say that I think their approach to The Last Man on Earth, the guy wandering around by himself, is kind of fun because it's not so much the fantasy of, what are all of the wonderful things, and it's not the dark fairy tale either of how traumatic and horrible, but just what do you really do when there's no one there to look? I mean, really,
he doesn't give an F because
just
why should he?
How gross would he get?
How gross would he get? How would he gain access to places he's not supposed to be? I think is a very funny recurring joke.
And what would he do in those places? What are his actual priorities? There's kind of the famous Twilight Zone episode of the man who just wants to read, and it's perfect for him.
Right.
But this is a different version of that, of just all the weird, destructive, crazy things that you think about doing and you can't because you live in a society where you get arrested.
And there are rules.
And there are rules.
But no, he doesn't have any. And Forte's great. It's kind of the perfect character for him because there's such a oddness and quirkiness to him. So we have those concerns, but again, it's from a couple guys who have overcome concerns in the past.
You assume that they have figured a way to overcome this. Again, I saw the first one. I think that we were sent two, but I've only seen the first one so far. So I do want to continue on and assess for myself, because that was a big question I had. I don't know how much of this I want to watch, really.
Yeah.
1 hour, sure.
And I will say this. I hope people who this sounds interesting to them, because it's definitely a show for people with an offbeat sensibility, but I hope they give it a shot, and I really hope people don't do the, this has no chance of succeeding, so why bother? Enjoy it while it lasts is what I'd say, because I do think it's a tough road. And people are gonna, I know the internet, and so people are gonna be like, oh, it's on Fox. Fox loves to cancel things, which is always my favorite thing. have some sexual fetish for cancellation.
It pleases.
They love to order interesting shows and cancel them. No, they love to order interesting shows, and most of them fail, because most shows fail in general, and if you're really going to try something outside the box, it's really going to have
taking a bigger risk. I would say with this one, like I said, I had those concerns, but I think the other important thing, too, is not just to tune in once, but then give it a few episodes with a series like this to see how are they going to solve this problem.
Because we're all curious.
Because we're all curious, and maybe it's going to be amazing. I mean, maybe this could be one of your kind of favorite things.
Yeah, and I'll be completely frank, I think it will be a very tough show to find a large audience and maybe a sustainable audience. I don't know, but I want to see it while it lasts. I want to see where they go. So
we like these people too.
We like these people. So give it a whirl, guys. Last Man on Earth on Sunday. Let us wrap up here with a couple reader emails. And this is an interesting topic, actually. John writes in going, "Hey guys, I don't write in very often, but I was looking at EW's list of network pilots that were ordered for the fall of 2015, and I saw Super Clyde on there. I was wondering if you could shed some light on the situation, since CBS ordered it last year, but they didn't order it to series. I've never heard of a pilot being remade after not getting picked up the previous year. Does that happen often? And do you think that helps or hurts its chances of getting picked up this year? I watched the Super Clyde pilot last year when CBS put it online. I enjoyed it. I liked Rupert Grint, so I'm sad to see he was replaced, but I'm interested to see what happens with this new version. Oh, I also want to thank you for your semi-regular, it's true, supply of insight into all things TV. I'm fascinated by the inner workings of the industry, so you guys help whet my appetite for inside information. Shakma."
Shakma, what a nice email. Get at it, Eric. Answer that question.
The answer to the question is not a ton, but it's not a crazy thing to happen. It does happen. CBS, when I think about it oddly, is a network that really likes to do that, which is...
If they like an idea.
If they like an idea and they make a pilot and it doesn't work, they go, let's take another crack at this.
Yeah.
One of the most famous, as far as what it led to financially for everyone involved, is Big Bang Theory. Mm-hmm. The big thing there is they kept the two leads.
Yeah.
They recast everyone else. The two guys, I should say.
Recastings aren't unusual at all.
Recastings aren't unusual at all, including like a major role, which means they have to reshoot like that chunk of the pilot.
Right, because often, theoretically, the chemistry there is there, and then you look at it, and it's not.
Yeah, yeah. And we've gotten, like, and sometimes this will happen, they send out the pilots. So when they announce the new shows in May after upfronts, that we usually get sent the screeners, but that's why they're very adamant, do not review off this.
Because it could be a completely different actor in a significant role.
The big one I always remember is getting the 30 Rock pilot when Rachel Dratch played what would become the Jane Krakowski role.
Yeah.
And then Chuck, they'd already just made this decision, but it's funny when Chuck was announced, and there were even pictures of Chuck where he had a hot Latina neighbor who you never saw because originally there was this other character.
Yeah.
And then they realized, it doesn't work, and we're just going to chop out, because that was easy because her scenes were very much like 3 scenes at his apartment complex. Just goes, but what he's asking, though, is much more like completely a pilot that they did not pick up, you know, and we're not ordering it for this fall, but then reapproaching it. And it happened with Big Bang. So Big Bang, it was like a full year of like, no, this didn't work. We like these Galecki and Parsons, but we have to rewrite a lot of this pilot, recast everyone else.
And then make billions forever.
And then make billions. And then Scrooge McDuck swim through our money
swimming in the gold forever. Maybe that'll happen with this too. We don't know.
Maybe it will. It's very funny.
Rupert Grint.
It's funny that he mentions that though, because it was so unusual they even put it online. That's very unusual. But I did look it up because right before I go, I know there are other examples in recent years. Let me look them up. I did. The other examples were shows that still failed because it's all crapshoot, guys. But Super Fun Night was reshot. And this is interesting that this has happened where Super Fun Night was a multicam the first time, and it was at CBS. And CBS passed.
You're just reminding me of poor Up All Night.
Yeah.
Let's not go there.
So CBS passed, but then I don't remember who produced Super Fun Night. I think Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers wanted to make this show still happen. There were other people involved wanted to make it happen, and then it ended up ABC, who said, let's start over. Unlike a show like I'm going to go all over the place here. I'm going to start like Backstrom. That pilot was passed on by NBC, and Fox just said, oh, we'll order that. We'll use your pilot. Although we still recast one role and reshot some stuff. Whereas with Super Fun Night, moved to a new network, completely reshot, changed the format, and happened. And then
still didn't work.
Still didn't work. And then the McCarthys, very recently, also didn't work. Was shot as a single camera. and then reshot his multicam. So
and still didn't work.
Still didn't work. But Big Bang Theory shows it can work. Yeah.
Big Bang Theory shows it can work, but also to your earlier point about cancellations and the frequency of cancellations, and even John Cryer, how many failed sitcoms he had.
Yeah.
Like, it is really hard to make a successful television show. Really, really, really challenging, and there are so many more that failed and succeed. Especially if you're talking about just in ones that are a pilot that's even ordered, and then one, is the pilot picked up or not? There's just, it's a tough formula to master. It's
very tough, and that's why I do think that Fox kind of gets unfairly piled on, and I understand why. It's because
beloved series are canceled.
And shows that are in our audience's wheelhouse more, you know, because no one's paying attention when ABC has a bunch of procedural drama, soapy shows, half-hour comedies.
Or a million half hours that don't make it.
I shouldn't say no one. I should say our audience is not so wired to be noticing that.
But there are a ton every year, and we just named a bunch of half-hour comedies that just didn't go, you know? And there are dramas every year that don't go. But when it's a sci-fi series, it's like, oh, you hate sci-fi? No, they don't. Like, there's just not enough people watching it.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, the reshooting thing, I should say, so CBS really likes to do that, and when they passed on How I Met Your Dad, which was a big surprise, it seemed like a no-brainer, the behind-the-scenes talk, and then they admitted it, Nina Tassler talked about it, they wanted to do that. They said, because, I mean, of course they wanted this follow-up to a huge show.
Why wouldn't you?
They said to the producers, okay, we don't think this pilot worked, so let's try again, you know, for next year. But the producers just, you know, the creators were like, we don't want to do, like, they walked away. Said, no, we will not do that, you know. And Chuck Lorre could have done that with Big Bang Theory. But he didn't, and now.
And now Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, and Scrooge McDuck in it. So yeah, we'll see how Super Clyde 2.0, you know, how that ends up. And then Alexander has an email. Hi, Eric and Roth. I writing to you from Toasty, Norway, which is my favorite intro ever to an email. All right, let's delve into let's get a Marvel question here. Since Sony and Marvel have made a deal regarding Spider-Man, do you think we will see a TV show about a Spider-Man character, maybe a show about Black Cat or Flash Thompson in the military? Of course, the last one depends on the age of the new Peter Parker. These shows could even be made by Sony and still be part of the MCU. Love the podcast. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I'm coughing on his question, but thank you.
No. No, I think that deal was made for the movies, first of all. It was made to share the character. Sony still owns the character.
Has the film rights.
They don't own Spider-Man outright, obviously. I think that Marvel still has actually the merchandising rights to Spider-Man.
And technically they have the TV rights.
And the TV rights to Spider-Man, but Sony has the movie rights to Spider-Man. Spider-Man will show up in the MCU. But it would because the MCU and Marvel TV are connected, and then it's an interconnected universe, and that would get very, very complicated because because Sony has that character in movies, which means it would have to exist in the same, I'm having trouble right now, which means that it would have to exist in the same world as the Marvel TV shows, which Sony has really no stake in that. And maybe you don't have to use Spider-Man, but you could use some of these other characters and make it all connect, but that would get very complicated looking at what Sony was doing with Spider-Man in the solo films. So my answer is no. I mean, I think it's just way too complex.
No, I completely agree, and I understand the question because when we heard this happening, you can't help but get ahead of yourself. They can do this, and they can do this, and they can do this. But at the end of the day, Sony still has those film rights. It's not like Marvel getting back the film rights to the character.
Marvel can just use the character in the film, which is exciting. That's like win enough.
It's huge, but there's still so many hoops to do all this other stuff. And it's very notable that the press release was so careful to say, the new Spider-Man will be introduced in a Marvel movie, and then there'll be a solo Spider-Man Sony movie set in the same universe, and that's it. I'm sure the plan is to reevaluate beyond that. But we don't know what's going to happen beyond that, and they don't know, or they would have said, there's like 6 movies. You know, they would have made that announcement.
I think they're going to be making those decisions as they see how this does.
And it's still going to involve a lot of people.
And a lot of money.
A lot of personalities, you know. I keep coughing, sorry. The new head of Sony is Tom Rothman, right?
Yes.
Who used to head Fox, where apparently he didn't get along with Marvel.
Right.
So that's not great.
That's complicated.
Yeah.
Now you're getting me, you're
Sorry.
playing. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I'm like, wow, that's a interesting, like given this big move, that big move is an interesting move.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, Amy Pascal's going to be the producer, and I think she's going to be the liaison between Marvel and Sony. So that should be nice. Not a tough job at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it does get super complicated, way too complicated for them to, again, try to invest in a television series when television series are really hard to make and really hard to make successfully. And Marvel, to date, I mean, look, Netflix series will be a whole different thing for Marvel. And we love S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter, but they haven't been huge successes for them. So I just think to try and invest that much energy in something that may not ultimately even work.
Yeah.
No, I don't think. I think they're going to put their energy elsewhere.
Yeah, so never say never, but I think it would take years of a successful relationship being built through the films, you know? Because, again and again, I'm like, Alexander, I totally understand it, because I had that night when your mind was reeling, I had the, oh my God, what if they put Peter Parker on Jessica Jones? Because in the comics, she went to high school with him, and it's a fun part of her backstory that she was crushing on Kiki Parker, who thought no girls liked him. Actually had this weird girl who was like into him that he just didn't notice because guys are stupid. But that's, and my first thought was, oh my God, they could do that.
Well,
and
he
then,
was just so focused on his crush.
Exactly. But then but then I realized, okay, the show's literally already filming. And then they were pretty quickly saying it's going to be another young, like probably high school age Peter Parker, so that wouldn't even work for Kristen Ritter.
Age-wise.
And then on top of that, again, that would be another deal. Like Sony and Marvel would have to come to a separate agreement to be like, hey, and what if this Peter Parker shows up on this Netflix show that you're not profiting from, Sony? How do you like that?
And Sony, there's nothing in it for them at all. I mean, what's in it for Sony in this Marvel deal is frankly, Kevin Feige's wisdom about how to direct this character, which is pretty invaluable. Yeah. Since they've not been able to totally master that on their own. And B, massive, beautiful exposure for their character in these very successful Marvel movies.
With the Spider-Man movie brand tarnished, it's about using Marvel's aura to, and because now that we know the deal, it is fascinating that there's no money involved, and so Sony is not making any money off of what we presume is Civil War, whatever movie Spider-Man is in.
And Marvel's not making any money off their solo film.
But it's for Sony, it's that like, you kind of help us get Spider-Man his mojo back.
Yeah, you help get Spider-Man back on track. You help put the shine back on him by having him one of what is probably going to be a very successful movie, which is Civil War, if Marvel's track record is to be believed, to get exposure for this character in a positive way. And then Marvel gets to use the character, which they've desperately wanted to use, which is huge for them, and they get the merchandising. Right,
because they already own that, and now it's like, yay, those Spider-Man Civil War toys, those would be pretty awesome, right? So, but there's a limit, and so for right now, I don't think, that
not on TV.
Sorry, but one day, who knows? We didn't think the deal could happen for the movie, and it did. So.
I did,
I mean, I thought it could, but I also thought it was very easy for it to...
I will direct you back to podcast months and months and months ago where I bet... I'll have to dig it up, where I bet one Christopher Carl, one Jim Vejvoda, that it in fact was going to happen. So
the worse that the movie...
That was so petty.
The worse that movie brand was doing, the more it was in Sony's benefit to do this,
Yeah.
And so I think, the stars, I mean, as we said the night the news broke, that I was saying, like, it's a terrible lesson for Hollywood to take, but it was like those Spider-Man movies not going over well was like what we needed for this deal to happen.
I think that the final thing for the deal was the hack.
Right. And the fact that the deal could happen.
Yeah, and Sony being, and the emails came out that it had fallen apart, but still the hack hurt them so much that they needed to rebound. And I'm sorry I gave you a raspberry.
I don't care.
So rarely right. I have to.
I'm not Chris and Jim.
I have to celebrate those moments.
I'm not Chris and Jim. They can take that.
That raspberry is for you. Yeah. It's in the mail.
Yeah. So that's it for now this week, guys. But we are going to be back next week, and then of course I'm going to screw things up and go on a vacation again. But we'll see if I'm hacking and
for two more weeks.
2 more weeks.
Yeah, so we'll see you in a year.
Crazy plan to bank another podcast before I leave. I talked to the intrepid Daniel, who's filming this podcast right now, about maybe doing it. We'll see. We'll see. I have grandiose ideas that don't happen, like recording podcasts. So we'll see.
I think we can make it happen.
We can make it happen. Emails, send us channelsurfing@ign.com. Follow Twitter, Roth Cornett, Eric IGN, Shakma.
Shakma.